Year 11 data test, correct it, see how well they went. Provide good feedback on that task.
Taz Herman is a secondary school teacher, a maths teacher, and in the back end of the previous interview episode, you sent me the challenge to mark a student's test and provide some feedback to the student. It's to see if I have what it takes to be a high school teacher. Getting the info in is one thing, but seeing if it's retained is another. Taz, can you remind us what a good job looks like when it comes to providing feedback to a student?
So a good job is making sure that the feedback that you give is constructive but not harsh, and should be complemented in a way that for every skill set a student didn't show, should be balanced by two things that they did do well.
Since it's been 20 years since I was in Year 11 and you've sent me a Year 11 test, I should be able to understand where I have my own deficiencies. You've got to know your content before you can teach that content.
Of course.
I've sat the test, by the way. Looking at it, there were some terms that I didn't remember. Data types, definitions, standard deviation, stem plot. What the hell are those? So the test took me about 20 minutes and I couldn't work out what a stem plot was, so I Googled that. And it totally made sense after I Googled it. Then I answered the questions, but I wasn't sure about a question about interquartile range. But I got the right answer, which is quite nice to see. But I came about that answer in the wrong way. And then there was a question 10 about standard deviation. I had two answers, but was stuck on standard deviation, so I had to look it up again. Then I saw that I would need to square values, and I decided that instead I would just guess it. I've corrected my own test. After 20 years, out of 12 questions, I got 9 out of 12, or 75%.
Oh, good work. Nice. So, that's very good, considering how long you've been out of the teaching Year 11 realm. Yeah, that's really good.
And that's a B, and that's rather standard for me in maths, 7 to 11. Year 12, I barely passed, but I stopped caring about methods. But really, definitions was my downfall, and I also would have passed if I didn't Google the definitions, so that's also good to see for my own thinking. And also quite happy that just revising definitions really is all I needed to do to maybe ace this test.
If you didn't realize, when Year 11s do sit their test, they are entitled to one bound reference book. And so usually those references are the course content that we did prior to doing the test. And that booklet can be to their liking of any way. So they can put their own resources in, any definitions, examples, questions, formulas, etc. That's what you would be allowed. So I'll let you off the hook in terms of doing some online snooping. Considering that students are allowed to have that, that's completely fine.
I'll still take a B. I'm happy with a B. But all right, I'll weasel out and I'll take the 100%. Why not? Now, this trial was all about correcting a student's test. Now, you've sent me a student with a fake name, a very similar name to me. Oh, actually, I don't even want to say it's a fake name, but it looks very similar to me, Iain Ugud.
Yes.
This kid got 3 out of 12, or 25%. This kid really shat the bed. And it looks like they've guessed their way through it, which sounds very similar to what I did with the medical school examination to get into med school. To me, I'm looking at it and like, is it definitions this kid doesn't know about? But I don't think so. Is stats or data not this kid's thing? Is maths not this kid's thing? So there's a whole lot of questions that I have where I feel like it's hard for me to give good feedback, because did they guess it? Is this kid otherwise a good maths student, but this isn't their thing? They're in Year 11, so you'd think that they've chosen maths for a reason. I was thinking maybe you could help me learn how I can give good feedback, because it's obvious for me that I need to work on those elements that I mentioned earlier. So, like, can we pick out where this kid is deficient? Are they not grasping it? How would you approach this?
I try to figure out why a student thought the way they did if they answered a question incorrectly. And this could be due to a number of reasons. The biggest one is that the formula that they're relying on was either put into their resource book incorrectly. So when they've applied the formula, they've probably put an incorrect number of some sort, or they used the wrong number in the formula and it spat out a different answer. So that's probably one of the biggest things. So in terms of feedback, as long as you know your content, you would say, so I've noticed that when you approached this question and you provided this answer, I think the reason why you did this is because you did XYZ, where you should have done ABC. That's pretty much the template or structure of the feedback that I would give. It doesn't highlight that they did it wrong or anything. It just said, this is what you should have done instead of what you did do before. That's the main template. Now, if you can't find a particular reason why an answer is chosen that the way that it was, then it could have just been a wild guess. Sometimes I get my students to, if they really, really didn't understand a particular question, as feedback for me, I would tell them to write on the actual question sheet, I wasn't too sure on how to answer this. So then that is a reflection of my own teaching, and then something that I can modify or change or bring up the next time when I do teach this content, when maybe it comes to the end of your exam or when I teach this the next year. But if they circle it and they don't leave that feedback, then I try to engage into what it is. Why did they answer that question? What did they do wrong? Did they use the wrong formula? And that's the tricky part of, especially for beginning teachers, that's the tricky part of understanding why they took that left turn when they were meant to take the right turn.
You've sent me the answer, which is essentially multiple choice. This explains to me why teachers back in the day would say, can you please put your working down on the sheet? So I guess you can look at where they're going wrong when they are making bad decisions.
Yeah, working out is insight for a teacher. It's almost like an invitation for teachers to delve into the minds of the students. The more working out that they have, not too much, but the more working out they have, the more insight that a teacher can have. And then it could be just one little mess up within a particular line that has sent them down the wrong pathway. And so you can, if you're looking at the like a score perspective, you might give them a half score because of that. You use the correct formula and you inserted the right number into the formula, but your arithmetic somewhere along the lines were incorrect because you forgot to carry a 1 or you did your addition incorrectly. So I'll still give you some consequential marks, is what they're called, but I'm not going to give you the full mark, especially at a senior level. Other times they could just be guessing as well. So it's actually good to also create a test if it's multiple choice to make sure you have obviously the right answer, but ways or like kind of obvious traps that a wrong answer could be as well. So a lot of set questions, multiple choice questions that they have when they create a test, they're designed purposely to have misleading answers. So that's always important.
So Taz, I don't know how to give feedback for this, but also my maths knowledge isn't really there to be teaching. If it was, say, media or potentially English or something like that, I might have some more constructive feedback for this kid. With that aside, do you think you would hire me based on this so far?
Of course, because there's a teacher shortage.
All right, I'll take being the bottom of the barrel as a compliment.
No. Given that you're insightful to just understanding why a particular student thought the way that they did, and you wanted to investigate a little bit more, to have that desire there is enough for you to have that plan seeded. You have that bit of curiosity. So I would definitely, if I was a principal of a school, I would definitely take you on board as a teacher. And I know you said that maths is probably not your forte, but there's always other subjects that you can teach. There's a whole range of subjects and fields that you can showcase your skills and desire for. And I mean, especially in a school setting like this, rerun modules where students provide different topics that they want to explore. That's, a bit more unconventional in comparison to the public school system. Maybe one of the subjects that you could teach could be like media studies, or radio land could be the subject. We've taught like a wide variety of different subjects here. We've offered aviation, sporting fields, like there's a wide variety of subjects that could be taught. So I would hire you and be like, you got some good media exposure and you've been in that field for quite a long time. How about you teach that for a module? And I would be more than happy to take you on board.
It's good for me to hear. Right now on a job advertising platform, which I won't mention unless they sponsor the pod, there are around 2,200 secondary teaching jobs around Australia. And I know that multiple jobs are covered in one job posting, so there's obviously going to be a lot more than 2,000 jobs. The question I have is, do you think somebody who is not yet in the industry, will they be able to get a job? Answer is yes, there's a teacher shortage, but how does one get a job?
So I would make sure that I've got all my resumes and my CV or whatever. It is all done professionally. I've got all my past experiences and everything that's needed. Now, most schools, public schools, will have a thing called selection criteria that they need. So if you want to apply for a particular public school, there's going to be a bunch of selection criteria. So there's like a generic pool of questions that have to do with teaching, behavioral management, and philosophies around teaching. The school will pick the ones that are most relevant to them, the questions that are relevant to the identity of the school. And your job as a teacher is, once you've got your CV ready, you have to answer whatever curriculum questions they have thrown to you in about a paragraph or two. So one of the questions might be, what is your philosophy around behavioral management tactics within a classroom that embeds technology? And so that will be a good opportunity for you to talk about, say, cybersecurity. You can talk about how that's evolved and changed and how it's a bit of a challenge nowadays, and the type of tactics that you would employ if you were to be exposed to that type of topic. So if you were like an IT teacher, that selection criteria, you got to answer however many questions they throw at you. I think generally it's 8, maybe some more, depending on what type of school it is. Sometimes you can also get a job through agency. My wife currently works through a teaching agency. They do all the hard yards in terms of connecting you with the school. All you have to do is just make sure you put in your resume or your CV in. You do your clearance, you're working with Children's check, your Victorian Institute of Teaching check, and the agency will do the rest. They'll get into contact with, they've got some partner schools, and then they can send you off to a particular school for either a day or a block of time, depending on what your particular needs are. Because of the teacher shortage, the money is pretty good. Your daily rate is quite awesome. So yeah, if you're thinking about getting into teaching, it'd be awesome to be a casual relief teacher. It's always a good start. Kind of dip your foot into the water to test out a particular school or set of schools. And then if you form good relationships with the students or with the teachers or the principal, that could lead into something a bit more permanent. So there's different avenues that you can go through to get into a teaching job. But some teachers just stay into casual relief teaching, and they're making $500 for 6 hours of work. No meetings.
None of the bullshit you have to do. No, you get to have your holidays. That's very nice.
In and out, yeah.
That seems very appealing to me now. I haven't thought about that because, when you see a job, it's always about the full-time work. But I very much like my freelance casual life that I'm doing. That's piquing my interest a little bit. It sounds like every other job. If you're making a career change, if you're got the qualification, next step is get the resume and apply. That's good to know. What would you ask somebody like me who wants to become a teacher to see if they should actually become one?
Do you think that teachers can make a change or difference to an individual's life?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, the answer is yes, but I imagine as a teacher in especially the public system, you might find a whole lot of resistance that's stopping you from actually doing that.
Yeah, and the resistance can work in both ways. Maybe there's an inability to change someone's life, or there's an inability from the student's perspective to accept positive change, depending on what type of lifestyle or circumstance that they're in. And sometimes there's this tug of war between one or the other, depending on what situation you're in, depending on what age group you're teaching, the type of school that you're at. Yeah, there's different factors that can contribute to that. But I always like asking that. Do you think if you were a teacher, you can make a change or a difference in an individual's life? And if you say yes, and there's a big desire to want to do that, then maybe teaching is the right career pathway for you.
Okay, that's a good one to ponder. If you were starting again, would there be anything that you would do differently?
I think it would have to be, and this is a hard thing to I guess, change or modify. But to have more confidence in myself, I was very hesitant to get into teaching because I guess I was scared that I didn't have the ability to be a good teacher. I felt that as though that the personality trait that I have of being this kind, compassionate, and empathetic human being didn't tie well to the expectations of what being I thought a successful teacher would be. I always thought being a successful teacher was being this headstrong teacher with no emotion. As long as the kids understood the content and they were showing good results, that's all that mattered. So if I had to change or shift something from the beginning, it would be to have more faith in myself and believe in the abilities of what I can achieve and not have to compromise who I am as a person. I really wish there could have been someone in that field that could have told me that. I think there were people that I've met along the way during my teaching career pathway that have probably showcased that I'm such a kind person, so you'll be fine as a teacher. They've either explicitly showcased or told me that, which has probably been very good for me. But that would be the one thing that I would shift: the ability to have more confidence in myself. How I would do that, I have no idea. But I was coming into teaching at such a young age. I've matured now, become a dad and stuff, so my lens has shifted. And I think also I wish I got into the industry a bit earlier. I wish I just went straight into my maths degree straight after school and not mess around with going into industrial design. There was at some point I worked at CGU Insurance and Commonwealth Bank. I did the corporate lifestyle. I kind of wish that I didn't have that. Not that I wasted years or anything. It made me see that the grass wasn't as green as I assumed it would be. It was good to kind of trial out and filter out that those jobs weren't for me. But I probably would have changed. I would have got into teaching earlier, had I known. But other than that, everything else kind of fell into place. So I'm pretty happy with where I am now.
And that's the old double-edged sword of hindsight and regrets, or whatever. You can say, "Oh, I wish I didn't spend that time," but also now you know what you don't like, and you can just focus yourself in an area that you do like, which is obviously teaching. Is there anyone that you follow or look up to that helps you to become a better teacher?
There's been a few people that I've, I guess, stumbled across over my years, and it's not one teacher per se, but it's a selection of many teachers that have provided a skill set or showcased a skill set in one field or another. And I've kind of collected and chose the right ones for me and kind of embedded that into myself and what I think a successful teacher looks like. I've seen other teachers who are compassionate and caring, and I've seen the full advantage of that. I've seen some really super organized teachers who have got everything, like all their lessons for the whole year, lesson by lesson, lesson plans done, selection criteria done, which is like what the kids are going to learn, success criteria, learning intentions, all of that has been written and documented. Everything's already just in case teacher gets audited. I've seen the full advantages of that because there's a sense of clarity and knowing what the year is going to look like. Even though there might be like small shifts or changes, you might get new students in the class, or there might be like a random excursion of some sort. But being organized, I've seen the full advantages.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add that you think is beneficial?
I think if you want to know what one should do to be a successful teacher, I think it's just knowing or finding whatever tactics you can implement to differentiate work life from home life. This could be considered easy or harder for some people. Teachers kind of fall into this unfortunate role of integrating the two of those things together, their work life and their home life. And especially at the start of their career, and in the long run, this can be detrimental. It can really, take its toll. It has happened to me. It's happened to a few good friends of mine as beginning teachers, and I've seen quite a few teachers go into it, not know how to find that balance, and then just they're pretty crushed at the end of it. So some new teachers will minimize or even put on hold some of the things that are happening within their life and put more time and effort and energy into teaching. I've seen some beginning teachers lower their social lives and sacrifice some of the fun things or hobbies they do, or even family time. Diet can even be influenced from so much effort and work being put into teaching. And it can go into one extreme or the other. You can always emotionally eat, or you can just not have enough time to eat. I've seen that happen as well. So just make sure that you know how to successfully find that right balance. That's really important if you're going to be put into this industry. Because the one thing that we don't want to see is just teacher burnout. We're seeing more and more of that every single day. It's quite unfortunate, and nobody wins when there's a teacher burnout. The students don't win. They need consistency. The teachers don't win because they're mentally fatigued. The admin staff and the principals don't win because they're chasing their tails trying to find ways to put sills over the forever increasing cracks. And how do you find that balance? Nobody knows the answer to that. It varies from person to person. So just something to be aware of and keep in mind when getting into that industry.
That's some good advice as well. Work-life balance, a massive thing wherever you're currently placed. Teaching has a whole lot of demands, and it's obviously how you manage those challenges with yourself, but also with the day-to-day work, which will see your success. Thank you very much for your time and helping me learn what it's like to become a high school teacher. I have to say that maybe being a teacher is in the maybe pile.
Oh.
Me not being able to perform too well with the feedback of this test, is sort of water off a duck's back for me, especially because I know that maybe maths teaching, I would never get into it anyway. I'd be interested to see what a trial might be with a different subject or different specialty, but I reckon we can place it in the maybe pile.
Oh, that's good. I don't know if your other ones are in a definite yes pile or if the other ones are in a definite no pile, but I'll take maybe as a win.
I feel like the moment I have a definite yes is where this podcast ends. So let's see how we go.
Awesome. Well, there are awesome good sides to teaching. There is a sense of fulfillment in it. So if you ever wrap up this podcast, come join us on the dark side. We need more of yous.
Still got plenty more jobs and industries to take a look at, but maybe teaching will find its way bumping up the list. Got another job for me? Want to even help out and be interviewed? There's a place you can get involved. That's workexperiencekid.com.